So I got started because I'm an actress. So I studied drama and theatre in the States and in the UK. And while I was sort of studying that, I was participating in student short films, etc. And ended up meeting quite a lot of people who were obviously into filmmaking or making films, directors, cinematographers, videographers, DOPs, etc., the likes. And you just kind of start getting to talking and have a skills exchange. And so I would perform for them, and sometimes I would help out behind the scenes as well to do sound. Or I ended up starting to slowly like getting into more the production side of things, producing, because I sometimes do production running on the side as well, as a job. And it kind of just went from there. And a few years ago, one of the first sort of really official things that projects I made, was Shit Talk, a web series, a comedy web series about me and my best friend. And I made it and wrote it to celebrate me and my best friend, but also because I wasn't getting the work as an actor that I really wanted and needed to kind of help me further my career. So I thought I would make it myself, and I got my friend Raquel Grela involved as the director, and from there it just exploded into a sort of 15-man crew. Shit Talk went on to win Best Web Series Awards at Changing Face International, and several nominations, including Best Short of the Year program, as well as Best Actresses for both me and my co-star, and a few more, and was selected internationally. Yeah, and then during lockdown I made another short as well that was just in my bedroom. And that's kind of how I got started. And that one thing led to another, into making together with some more friends post-pandemic, really wanting to get creative again to make something new after such a long hiatus. And that's how Together came about.
Phoebe, wait. Slow down, will you?
I just want to get there.
I know, but I just need a minute, okay?
Careful.
I'm just getting some water.
Practically threw it on the ground.
I didn't throw it
I would describe Together as a continuous shot performance piece that shares the story of two estranged sisters who are thrown together by the loss of their mother, and desperately try to reconnect and find common ground in hopes of maybe repairing their relationship, maybe. And yeah, it's a story that's really close to my heart. I wrote it sort of in the middle of COVID. I had just lost my own father and was going through some other pretty intense times. And my friend Adam, who's the DOP, and I were nerding out over continuous shot scenes and short films together, and we both just got really excited. And it was during COVID, when sort of the film industry was a bit, nothing was really kind of happening, everything was uncertain, and we just said, why don't we just make something together? And so I wrote the script for it, and we had already discussed right from the beginning that it was going to be continuous, obviously, and that we wanted to be more of a performance piece, so not too much direction, but just enough, and that to trust Adam to find the moments and follow us as we follow the story and the narrative through this forest. I don't know, the forest seemed like a natural choice as well, which obviously presented its own difficulties. So before filming, we had to make sure, obviously scout location, but then also map out the route that we were going to take, and practice that several times, so that Adam knew where he was going, and so that we could kind of plan some moments of the shots in between the trees and things like that. And so Adam wouldn't fall over, and obviously it was very difficult. And then when we added in Rob with sound, yeah, that was tricky as well, but it was perfect the way it was in terms of keeping it a very small crew like that over that kind of terrain. Yeah, I can only imagine it being more difficult and complicated when other people and way more people and a bigger crew is involved. That's why films like Victoria are like just so mind-blowingly incredible. So that was one of the films that inspired the technical side of things a lot. But yeah, it's a piece I'm really proud of, and I know it's an unconventional narrative that doesn't have traditional resolve, but that was intentional. I was trying to capture that moment, as you can probably tell after watching it, of, yeah, those moments in life where we don't have answers and we don't know what's going to happen next, and that kind of sense of confusion and that being okay. But in terms of female-driven narratives in cinema, two of my favorite filmmakers would be Lulu Wang and Greta Gerwig. I mean, their films are iconic. One of the things I loved so much about Lulu Wang's Farewell was how beautifully not only she captured what it feels to like to be torn between two countries, which, even though I'm not Asian American, as a German South African growing up in Hong Kong, I totally related to that feeling of being in different parts of the world or different parts of your hometowns and never feeling quite enough like you fit in, or that, and just a beautiful way in terms of dealing with grief and loss and family. And then, of course, Greta's work is just, need I say much, right? It just speaks for itself as well. So those two filmmakers really inspire me, but I'm more of a sci-fi fantasy film person predominantly, to be honest. And so two filmmakers, well, three technically, who massively inspire me and whose work I adore would be Alex Garland. I mean, he's made so many sci-fi films that are pretty much almost all my favorite and my top sci-fi films, but as well as Lana and Lily Wachowski, who's obviously made things like Sense8, The Matrix, and are huge influences in my work, especially as a queer artist as well. And so, yeah, those are just a couple of my favorite filmmakers. We would be here forever if I went on about more, so I'll keep it short. If I had a good budget, I would love to make my most recent script that I've just finished of a short film, which is a queer sci-fi actually. I would love to make that. So that's what I would do if I had a great budget, is make a sci-fi short, because I just love sci-fi so much, in the way that you can hold up a mirror to society in so many different ways, but have it not be as intense maybe, because it's also sort of escapism. So even though you can put so many brilliant messages and poignant, important messages in there, it's also escapism at the same time. And then also just in general, I think, you know, fantasy and sci-fi, there's just so much room and so much scope for queer stories, and I think space and fantasy in general can just be like way more queer than it already is. And I think those are beautiful ways in which to tell more queer stories and begin to normalize those narratives a lot more, and yeah, in just very exciting and fun ways as well, that aren't necessarily coming out, just like coming out stories or things like that, but ones that actually celebrate connection and love and human interaction and humans or aliens, you know, whatever, or other fantasy creatures, but just the beauty of love and connection and what that means and how it transcends everything. Yeah. Well, first of all, after having done Shit Talk, where I was also the producer on, I would make sure that I am not the producer. Not because I was bad at it, because it's a lot of responsibility. So I would find someone who is a producer and good at what they do. And then also find an excellent first AD, because they will make sure that everything, well, those two people will make sure that everything runs to schedule, either off screen and or on set. So those would my first go-to things be. But other than that, just extensive planning in terms of storyboarding, making sure we have locations and things like that, you know, just make sure that everything pre-production basically is completely in line, and ready to go, before we set off. I mean, that's all you can hope for really, right? Is like putting down all the foundations and then hoping that everything runs smoothly, but it's film, so you know, you take what you can get. But that's what I would do. And also making sure that I have a team around me who I completely trust, who I know are passionate and are excited about the story and the project as well. Yeah, and also I think when you have a good budget, like you were saying in the previous project, one of the things that helps with that as well is when you're paying your crew, which we should all be paying our crew guys, especially after the strikes, right? Well, the writer strikes, but also, you know, generally pay your crew. But yeah, if you pay your crew as well, and you're making sure that you have a great on-set environment, a good work environment, where people are taken seriously and taken into consideration no matter their position, because it takes a village to make film, short or feature. Yeah, making sure that there's a good working environment and you're working with people you trust and love and who trust and respect you and your vision as well. So those would be the steps I would take. Two things actually. So the first one was the first one was being the writer, director, and actor in it. That was hard. It was difficult to juggle the performer hat and director hat on the same day. I mean, I completely trusted my DOP Adam to navigate a lot of the things as well. So huge shout out to him. And also my co-star Gemma it was such a collaborative, beautiful way that we worked together. And even though I was directing it predominantly, we all put in input into making sure that we were creating something great together, and that everybody got to have an opinion and have feedback. Basically, obviously, at the end of the day, it came down to my decision, but yeah, and that's how I like to work as well. Anyway, I like it to be a collaboration. And also, yeah, especially in terms of the writing as well, taking input of that. I'm always open to input as long as it's true to the narrative that I'm trying to tell, of course. And then the other hard thing was not so much location, it's like in terms of finding it, but in terms of mapping out the route, because one thing that was important to us was finding a very specific tree. But then we also, the beginning bit that we started off, we were really in love with those spaces. And so we were aware that it's a bit of a walk, but we also thought in the end that it kind of lent itself beautifully to that, with it being a bit more a walk and having more silences in between. And at the end of the day, it's kind of made the film, and it's given it a kind of almost like Waiting for Godot kind of essence to it a little bit, where I'm sure people will be sitting a little bit like watching and enjoying, but also like you know, you're a little bit of like, okay, when's something gonna happen next? And I love that, and I'm totally happy with that. And so that was difficult initially, but to map that out timing wise, but we did it. Well, as I already mentioned, I have a queer sci-fi script that I would love to have made. And I'm also working on my first feature still. I started last year. It needs a complete rewrite, so I'm working on that. But I'm also working on turning my web series Shit Talk into a actual series. So I am currently redrafting the pilot for that and fine tweaking everything. So in terms of filmmaking, that's what's headed for my future in that sense. So hopefully watch this space in the next couple of years. You'll see some stuff from me, which would be very exciting. Yeah, and then otherwise, obviously, I'm also still a voice actor and an actor. So whatever the wind blows my way and whatever fun projects I can get my hands on, yeah, coming to a cinema near you. Watch out.